Were you the art kid in your elementary school class? And do you remember the day you discovered your first art community on the internet? But those other art kids? They kinda knew how to make things look 3D. So you were like, what, 10, 11? And you realized that you were not the very best. Like no one ever was. I'd say that my art adventure really started on a website named topmodel.bits. The brand sells sketchbook type books with bases in them on which you would draw clothes. And they had this website where everyone would post their finished drawings. The day I discovered it was pure magic. I love seeing everyone's art and I was immediately so eager to post my own. I don't remember my old password, but I wanted to create a new account to find my old one, and you can't do that anymore. I remember that over time more and more artists started moving on, especially the older and more popular ones. I mean, I stopped posting too when I was around 13, so yeah, they shut it down. The page exists, but it serves just promotional purposes now. So here I pulled up the page on a Wayback Machine. This is what it looked like back when I was an active user. There was a Creative Studio tab and there was also a Community and Forum tab. The forum was quite active. I opened the weekly charts, but sadly you can see anyone's art. On the sides you can get a better look at the bases though. I remember loving the mermaid design on the left so much. But enough of that. In this video I want to redraw one of my first 3 designs. Our first candidate is this blue design. It says pomeriggio spelled incorrectly in the corner, which means afternoon in Italian. So yeah, this was my idea of an afternoon look when I was 11 years old. Next up is this princess design. I feel like she was originally a bride, but then I turned her into just a princess. What I find hilarious about this design is that when I wanted to give her a little tiara, I ran into a little dilemma. See, I'd already outlined the hair, so I just left the gap. And lastly we have this orange fit. Here I utilized the sheets of pattern paper they provided with the set a lot. Her shirt, her shoulder thingy and her pants are all cut out. I asked you on Instagram to vote on which drawing I should redesign in this video, and this is the one most of you wanted to see. So let's go! Do you ever look back on drawings from your childhood and think, man, I wasn't a child prodigy after all. I was just a child. So, I knew from the get-go that I didn't want to just redraw the same design, because if you set me down today, that design isn't something I would have drawn in the first place, you know? You won't catch me drawing tight pants today. If I ever draw tight pants, call government officials, because it's not me, it's a skinwalker, and it's a bad one. Maybe it's an intern, I don't know. As usual, I'm working in Procreate, and what you're watching me do is construct a roughly person-shaped base that I'll draw on top of until I figured out the design. Or rather, brought to paper or screen what I'm seeing in my head. I started with the earrings because I had this vision on public transit. In the original piece, the earrings were these little stickers of little characters, and they're kind of too much of a thing to leave out. Like, they have little faces and they're wearing lipstick. I thought I could interpret them as the angel and the devil on her shoulders almost. I wasn't feeling their new designs though, so I moved on. The hair is pretty much the same, I just straightened the bangs. When it came to her shoulder thingy, I toyed with a few different ideas. Thought about going with a little cape, but that would have covered up too much of the shirt. Didn't want to go for a bolero situation because I've got beef with boleros too, not just tight pants. I don't like them. In the end, I opted for a squarish blazer made from a stiff fabric. Like, not something you're supposed to wear on a daily basis when being put under citizen's arrest by Karen. I kept the bow but made it larger, and I also made the pants bigger. They're supposed to resemble a skirt. At this point I wasn't feeling the design, so I decided to move on to colors, hoping they would give me some new insights. I chose to go for hair that was much more vibrant, because I love vibrant colors. For her jacket and pants I tried out some different shades. The first one was too reddish. The second one is in retrospect my favorite. It's camel, right? I ended up settling on a more reddish tone for this draft though. I kept the ribbons nice and dark. The shirt also stayed pretty much the same. Always love having a pop of a different color in my palettes. The only thing that really changed is the addition of the 2-part piece, isn't it? To be honest, I'm not sure what her shoes were meant to be in the OG. I don't think they're boots, but I also don't think I would have drawn heels with socks when I was 10. I remember that trend coming around a little later because they wrote about it in those magazines for teenagers. I am 100% sure I didn't know how to read German when I drew this though. Anyway, I went with the socks and heels route with the ribbons because when in doubt, add a ribbon. Character design rule number 1. Yeah, so at this point I still wasn't feeling the design. Yours truly was running out of options. I had added multiple bows, sunglasses, because character design rule number 2 is actually when in doubt, add sunglasses, and glitter. Like, what more is there to anything? So how did I solve it? Did I start over, try new ideas? No, I went out and took out the trash. At night. Me, I am the trash. And you can bet I had a vision on the stairs. I have no idea what they put on them, but it works. I'll take 20. I saw another silhouette. I rounded up the sleeves, snatched the waist, shortened the dress, and darkened the sunglasses. And there we have it. It's accomplished. It's done. Look at this diva. Then it was time for this diva behind the screen to go touch some grass. And look at this lock I saw attached to a bridge. I'd love to know the story behind it. Oh, look at these. These are some warm-ups I did a while back. They're just really quick drawings. You know how they always say to draw things on your desk? This is my new desk buddy. He strikes me as an Oliver. Pet for good luck. It was time to work on the sketch and the line art, so I pulled up Pinterest, knowing I wouldn't find what I needed. Because what was I even looking for? At this point it had been about 2 weeks since I finished the draft, and I was unsure what I wanted. Looked up women in suits, as you do. But is what I was drawing even considered a suit? I landed on this pose, and although I ended up changing it completely, it was a good jumping off point, I suppose. Or should I say, suppose? No, I shouldn't. We're speeding through the sketch and line art because I didn't record it. Luckily I had Procreate's time-lapse running. I zoom in and out and undo a lot when I sketch and ink. You don't want to see that. I don't want to edit that. I'm doing us a favor. When my poses start looking a little stiff, my go-to is to push out the upper body and tilt the head. I did it here too, and she started to look so magical, girl. It wasn't a direction I intended, but I started loving the drawing so much. At this point I moved on to a second sketch layer and stopped referencing my reference. It wasn't working out anyway. This is where she truly turned into a magical girl, I feel like. The shapes of her hair, sleeves and pants kind of took on a life of their own, and I was totally okay with that. Here's a peek at the finished line art before we move on. As always, I used Procreate's default 6B and HB pencils. Starting out the coloring with what I like to call the blue man stage. When filling in the base colors, it gives me a feeling of control to use kind of obnoxious and very visible colors. In rare cases, I end up keeping the color, but that's mostly the case when I'm using my toxic greens and purples. After I've colored all the sections, I simply alpha lock the layer and change the color. By alpha locking, you can draw outside of what's already on the canvas. Next, she needed blush. I add blush by setting a new layer to multiply and using the airbrush to apply a reddish tone to the skin. I wasn't sure how I wanted to tackle the pattern on her suit. It's too complex to just draw it, at least I could never. In my draft it looked very messy, but the entire draft was messy, so it didn't stand out. Here though, the line art is very clean, so just winging it wasn't an option. I decided to draw one of the shapes using symmetry tools and then create a pattern. Next, I wasn't sure whether I wanted the pattern to follow the folds of her clothing or just lay on top. I like the look of patterns in drawings that are just overlaid, but I couldn't figure out whether I was making a decision or if I was just copying out and trying to justify it. It's that deep. In the end, I decided that the pattern wouldn't follow the folds, but I would address the left and right sides of her vest and pants separately so it wouldn't line up perfectly throughout the drawing. In the original, the pants and shoulder thingy are just cut out, so it's kind of an homage to that too. I think this is the most stylized and bubbly hair I've ever drawn. The drawing part was fun, the base colors went fine, but when it came to shading, I had no idea how to go about it. I started with some simple cell shading. Usually I'd add a few darker strands following the shape of the hair and then highlights. But what do you do when your hair is a blob? Do you shade it like hair? Treat it like a blob. See? It's nuanced. Instead of my usual shading, I added darker and lighter strands that are curly and fun and placed them on top of the line art. That way I didn't have to stay within boundaries I didn't fully grasp. Oh boy, it's getting deeper. For the longest time, I would draw beneath my line art, and when I wanted a specific part to be less harsh or to blend in, I changed its color. Sometimes that made it lose a little bit of its boldness though. One day I started adding details on top of my black line art and it was such a game changer. I always do it for eyebrows, light eyelashes and seams on clothing. I just love how it adds detail, but it's the easiest thing ever to do. The shirt. It made me rage quit. Mind you, at this point I was already 6 attempts in. It's the simplest pattern ever, same as the original. Lines going one direction and lines going the other direction, but I wanted to get it right, you know? I loved this attempt, but I had drawn the lines on the same layer as the base color. Now how do you shade them? Setting the shadow layer to multiply would have introduced more colors, and I didn't want that. I'm very specific about not doing that, so I had to redraw it again and I just rage quit. I left. Came back refreshed after walking to the door and right back to my desk. Redid the shirt, didn't record it, and then it was time for the sleeves. You might have noticed that the arms have line art even though they're technically covered. While brushing my teeth one night, I had the idea to make the sleeves sheer. To get the look I wanted, I used the layers to my advantage and placed one layer of fabric behind her arms and one on top. To really get the point across, I changed the color of the line art for the hair and everything else colored accordingly. The sleeves are attached to the vest by imagination, by the way. I don't usually stylize things this heavily, but I just like the sketch so much I didn't want to change anything. One of my favorite things to add to my drawings is glitter, and I found a method I really like that looks exactly how I want it. I use Procreate's default specs brush, the splattery one, on a layer set to add. When you first apply the glitter, the brush pattern is super noticeable and doesn't have the right texture, so I use the same brush but as an eraser to break it up. This makes the glitter fade a bit, so I duplicate the layer to bring it back. If it's still not quite right, I erase again. After 2 or 3 rounds, it usually looks just right, and it looks so fun and so magical. I'd love to eat the bows on her vest. I can picture the texture they'd have if they were candy so clearly. And here we have it, she's done. After I finished the draft, I was unsure whether I could pull it off, to be honest, so I'm pleasantly surprised by the result. It's one of my more detailed drawings in a while. Here's a little comparison of the two. I feel like 10-year-old me knew that it would take her just 15 more years, but I'm glad she didn't give up. If you're still here, thanks so much for watching. I hope you enjoyed this little video and see you next time. Bye!